Humanity had always been strange in the eyes of the galaxy. For countless alien civilizations, Earth was not just another planet, it was a terrifying anomaly, a place where the environment itself attacked life every single day. Hurricanes that tore apart coastlines, earthquakes that cracked continents, volcanoes that spat lava into the skies, diseases that mutated faster than medicine could stop them, and predators that evolved sharper claws and smarter instincts with every generation. To the rest of the galaxy, Earth was a nightmare world. To humans, it was home. Because of this, humanity received a special classification in the Galactic Index, Death. The name alone carried a weight that made many alien diplomats sweat during meetings. It meant humans were born in a place that should have killed them, yet they survived. More than that, they thrived. They spread across their dangerous world, built cities in impossible places, sailed across deadly oceans, climbed freezing mountains, and made fire danced to their will. Other species admired them, feared them, respected them, and sometimes avoided them entirely. But despite the fear, humans did not think of themselves as monsters. They laughed, danced, argued, created art, and formed friendships with beings the galaxy never expected to welcome them. They brought strange humor, stubborn determination, and an unexpected warmth wherever they traveled. And though they could be terrifying in battle, they were often the first to help a struggling world, the first to share technology, and the last to abandon an ally. Across the galaxy, stories about humanity traveled faster than light. Children from peaceful planets whispered tales of human bravery, while their parents warned them about human unpredictability. Soldiers spoke of human endurance. Scientists spoke of human curiosity. But one thing was known by all. When the Death Worlder Armada moved, something serious had happened. The Armada was not a normal fleet. It was humanity's answer to every threat the galaxy could offer. Built with the strongest materials, powered by unstable but incredibly efficient reactor cores, and crewed by men and women trained to survive anything, the Armada was rarely sent out. It was humanity's last resort, its shield, its sword, and its promise generations ago. During a turbulent time in the galaxy, humanity had formed an alliance with a small species called the Vir. They were gentle, peaceful, and deeply intelligent, but they were not warriors. Their world was beautiful, full of floating crystal forests and lakes that sparkled like stars. Starships from their planet were slow, soft, and mostly used for exploration or knowledge sharing. They studied history, languages, and ancient artifacts. Conflict was something they avoided entirely, which made them vulnerable to the cruelty of more aggressive species. During those early years of the Alliance, the Virellans had saved a group of stranded human researchers from a reactor malfunction. The accident had been catastrophic, and the humans would have died within hours, but the Virellans risked their own safety to rescue them. It was a simple act of kindness, but humanity never forgot it. An old promise was made between the two species, a promise of mutual protection. It was small, symbolic, and many believed it would never matter again. Decades passed, and the Alliance remained peaceful but quiet. The Virellans continued their peaceful lives, and humanity with its rapidly expanding colonies focused on other threats. The promise faded into the background, remembered only by historians and a few senior officers. But fate has a strange way of waking old promises when the galaxy least expects it. In the present cycle, far from Earth, in the calm and beautiful Virulent sector, something terrible happened. A distress signal erupted across the stars, frantic, broken, and filled with panic. It was not a simple call for help. It was a scream, a desperate message from a species that had no weapons strong enough to defend itself. The sender was a Virulent elder named Lethera, her voice shaking as she transmitted coordinates. Her final words before the signal cut off were filled with terror. To any Allah, please someone, help us. The message traveled through old Alliance networks, bouncing across communication relays that had not been used in generations. Many of the systems were dusty, forgotten, barely functioning. But somehow, through time and distance, the signal reached Earth. On Earth's orbital command station, alarms echoed through the metal halls. Officers rushed to communication consoles, their eyes widening as they decoded the ancient Alliance frequency. Admiral Kalen Ward, the commander of the Death Worlder Armada, was called immediately. Ward was a stern, calm man with lines of experience carved into his face. He had seen wars most people could not imagine. He had watched entire fleets burn, defended colonies from extinction, and survived missions that others considered suicide. But he was also known for something rare among military leaders: empathy. He cared about the innocent, the vulnerable, and the allies who trusted humanity. When the officers showed him the Virellan distress signal, he did not hesitate. An old promise had resurfaced, and to him a promise was sacred. "We owe them," Ward said quietly. "Prepare the Armada." The officers exchanged wary glances. Deploying the entire Armada was not a small decision. It was a message the whole galaxy would notice. It meant humanity was serious. It meant the threat was deadly. It meant someone had crossed a line. Ward continued, his voice firm but filled with a sense of duty. "They saved our people once. We will not let their kindness be forgotten. Not now. Not ever." Within hours, the Death Worlder Armada came to life. The hangars buzzed with activity. Pilots sprinted to their fighters. Engineers sealed armor plating and checked reactor stability. Soldiers strapped into gravitational harnesses. Massive starships, each large enough to blot out moons, aligned in formation. Their engines glowed like the hearts of miniature suns. The lead ship, the Resolute, was Ward's flagship. Its armor was dark silver, etched with the names of fallen soldiers from past battles. Its engines hummed with the power of an entire city. It carried the Titan breakers, elite soldiers trained to survive deadly environments, and advanced tactical drones that could map battlefields in seconds. That as the Armada prepared to warp, Ward stood on the command deck, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Virelans were running out of time. He thought of their gentle nature, their soft voices, their world that glowed like a peaceful dream. The idea of such a beautiful place under attack burned inside him. He turned to his officers. "Activate long-range scans. I want constant updates the moment we exit warp." "Yes, Admiral," they replied, their voices steady despite the tension. Across the galaxy, the Virulents waited in despair, unaware that help was already racing toward them. They did not know if anyone had heard their call, and many believed they were moments away from extinction. Their skies were filled with enemy shadows, and their defenses were crumbling, but far away. Humanity was coming. There were whispers across the Armada stories that circulated through the crew. Some remembered the old alliance. Some had never heard of the Virelans at all. But every human understood one thing clearly. They were answering a cry for help. That alone was enough reason that, as the final checks were completed, Ward issued the last command before departure. "Set course for the Virelan sector. Maximum warp. We move now." A deep rumble spread through the entire fleet as warp drives activated. Space bent, stars stretched, and millions of tons of human engineering tore through the void with unimaginable force. The Armada vanished into warp space, leaving Earth behind like a fading memory. The journey would take hours, but for the Virulans every minute mattered. As the ship sped through the silent darkness, Ward replayed the distress message again and again. He studied the fear in Lethera's voice. He analyzed the faint sounds in the background: explosions, alarms, screams. He listened to the moment her signal cut off, trying to determine whether she had survived. The weight on his shoulders grew heavier with each replay, but it also strengthened his resolve. Humans were often judged by their world: dangerous, unpredictable, wild. But this mission would show something more. It would show what humanity truly was when others needed them. Protectors. Back on the fleet, soldiers rested in their bunks, staring at the metal ceilings above them. Some whispered prayers, others silently prepared their minds for war. The Armada was powerful, but even they did not know what waited for them at the destination. The unknown never scared humans, it only made them ready. While the soldiers rested, the officers worked. They analyzed every scan, every detail, every anomaly. The longer they traveled, the more unusual data they uncovered. Something massive was happening in the Virelan sector, something dangerous, something that made even the experienced officers uneasy. Ward knew this mission might not be simple, but simplicity had never been humanity's path. From the beginning of their existence, humans had fought through impossible odds. They did not run, they did not surrender, and they did not abandon allies. As the Armada sliced through the final stretch of warp space, a sense of calm settled over Ward. He knew the moment they arrived, everything would change for the Virulans, for humanity, and possibly for the galaxy. The crew braced themselves. Engines roared softly. Weapons systems warmed. The stars outside twisted and blurred, and as the final seconds counted down, Ward whispered to himself, almost like a promise, "We're coming. Hold on." When the warp tunnel collapsed and the Armada re-entered normal space, they arrived at the very edge of a battlefield that would test everything humanity stood for. When the Death Worlder Armada dropped out of warp space, the peaceful beauty of the Virelan sector was gone. In its place was chaos. The stars around the Virelan colonies seemed dimmer, as if the darkness itself had grown heavier. Fires burned on the planet's surface, glowing like angry red veins through the once shimmering forests and crystal lakes. Alien warships swarmed the sky above the colony like a cloud of metallic insects, moving in cold, precise patterns. This was the Draxian swarm. Admiral Kalen Ward stood at the front of the command deck, his eyes locked on the horrifying view. The Draxians were exactly what humanity feared: an unstoppable expansionist species that consumed everything, weaker than themselves. They respected no treaties, offered no negotiations, and spared no one. Their only goal was conquest. Their ships were sharp, jagged things, built like weapons rather than vessels. Their movements were synchronized, controlled by hyperlogic and brutal efficiency. Ward whispered to himself, not in fear, but in disappointment. The Virelans never stood a chance against something like this. They were scholars, dreamers, artists. They had never trained for a war like this. The moment the Armada appeared, dozens of hostile ships peeled away from the planetary assault and began to move toward the humans. Long-range scans confirmed what Ward suspected. The Virelan colony had only minutes left before total collapse. Their shield generators were flickering, their defense towers destroyed, and entire regions were burning. Evacuation transports lay crashed across the planet, some still smoking. A communication officer shouted from behind Ward, "Admiral, we're receiving weak virulent life signs across several districts. They're scattered and hiding underground." Ward nodded, his jaw tight. The Draxians were hunting them. Another officer analyzed sensor data and added, "Local defense fleets, wiped out within the first hour." Ward closed his eyes for a moment. The Virellans had tried to fight back, even though their ships were small and slow compared to the swarm. They had faced the impossible. But it still hurt to know they had died alone, waiting for a help they weren't sure would come. He looked at his crew, his voice steady. "Begin full-spectrum scans. Identify all survivors, all enemy formations, and any potential escape routes." The officers obeyed immediately. Then another screen lit up with a message from a Draxian command ship. The alien's face appeared, if it could be called a face. Its features were sharp and insect-like, with too many eyes and a voice that sounded like metal grinding against stone. It stared at humanity with cold amusement. "You are the humans," it hissed. "The Deathworld beings, the myth." The bridge fell silent. Even the hum of the engines seemed too quiet. "We have heard stories," the creature continued. "Stories of your strength, your violence, your chaos. But myths cannot frighten the swarm." Ward replied with calm control. His voice carried the weight of a man who had seen the worst of war. "You are attacking a defenseless colony under our protection." "There is no defense," the alien screeched. "There is only the swarm, and your arrival changes nothing." Ward stared at it without blinking. "You destroyed their homes, their cities, their families. They were weak," the Draxian said simply. "We destroy the weak." The message ended abruptly. For a moment, the bridge was silent, except for the low beeping of scanners. Then, quietly but clearly, Ward spoke the 4 words that would decide everything. "We hold this line." It was not a shout, not a cry of rage. It was a promise. A Deathworlder promised that the Armada moved into formation. Dozens of massive human warships aligned their shields and weapons. Fighters launched in clean, perfect rows. Every soldier, every pilot, every engineer understood exactly what was about to happen. Humanity had arrived. The Draxian swarm launched the first attack. Their ships charged forward like a tidal wave, firing unstable plasma bursts that streaked through space in bright, violent arcs. The human shields absorbed the first volley with a loud, rolling crack, like thunder echoing across metal canyons. Ward's voice cut through the noise. "Return fire." The first volley from the Deathworlder Armada was precise and devastating. Human warships didn't shoot wildly, they targeted weak points. The Draxians didn't even know they had engines command nodes. Shield core. Suddenly, dozens of swarm ships exploded in sharp flashes of blue and white light, but the Draxians were endless. For every ship destroyed, 2 more appeared. They swarmed like insects, overwhelming with numbers rather than strategy. They spread across the human formation, testing for weaknesses, pushing hard on any slight opening. On the planet below, things were even worse. Virulent civilians were gathered in underground shelters, huddling together as explosions shook the ground. The sky above them was a battlefield lit by fire and debris. Many believed the end had already come. Meanwhile, inside the human fleet, the tension grew. "Admiral," tactical officer reported, "the Draxians are deploying brood carriers around the colony. They're preparing planetary sterilization." Ward gripped the rail harder. Planetary sterilization meant exactly what it sounded like: the removal of every living thing on the surface, not just not just plants. "Everything. The officer continued. "Evacuation is impossible now. The swarm has locked down every orbit corridor." Ward understood. If humanity was going to save the Virellans, they couldn't run. They had to fight. The decision he made in the next moment would be remembered for generations. Deploy Titan breakers to forward carriers. He ordered. Every officer on the bridge snapped to attention. The Titan breakers were humanity's most feared ground force. Soldiers enhanced with cybernetics, resistant to extreme temperatures, capable of surviving chemical attacks, radiation bursts, toxic atmospheres, and even short periods of vacuum. They were raised, trained, and conditioned on Earth's the greatest death. Sending them meant the battle was about to shift into something far more brutal. But even before the Titan breakers launched, something unexpected happened. The Draxians began broadcasting a message across open channels, loud enough for every ship, human and virulent, to hear. It was filled with taunting confidence. "Humanity," the voice screeched, "your Deathworld myths do not scare us. You will fall, your allies will burn, and your world will be next." Ward watched the broadcast with cold, steady eyes. Their arrogance wasn't surprising, but it was dangerous. A species convinced of its own invincibility, to make terrible decisions that could destroy innocent lives. Suddenly another alert flared. Across the command screens, "Energy spike in the southern continent." Ward turned sharply. "Put it on main view." The screen displayed a huge explosion erupting from one of the Virulent arcology's giant structures that held entire communities. The blast tore through crystal towers, sending debris flying into the sky like shattered stars. Fires burst across the landscape. Hundreds of thousands of virulence lived in that arcology, and now it was gone. Silence filled the bridge. In that short moment, everyone felt the weight of the loss. Even the strongest soldiers clenched their fists. The virulence were gentle, peaceful beings. They had never harmed anyone, and yet they were being wiped out mercilessly. The swarm still wasn't finished. They prepared another sterilization burst, aiming for a second arcology. The virulence there had no chance. They were running, crying, trying to escape underground, but they wouldn't make it in time. Ward knew what the Dractions had done. They were probing, seeing how humanity responded to tragedy, trying to see if humans would freeze, retreat, or choose fear. They had made a mistake. Ward's control finally broke not into rage, but into iron determination. He gave the order that would make history. All ships full offensive. Target brood carriers and command vessels only. No survivors. The Death Worlder Armada roared to life. Engines blazed. Weapons ignited. Drones launched. Fighters dove into formation. It was not chaos, it was the cold, terrifying precision of humanity in war. The Dractans realized too late what they had triggered. Human battleships unleashed rail cannons that fired projectiles at impossible speeds. Missiles streaked through the sky, guided by advanced AI that predicted swarm movement before it happened. Fighters sliced through enemy lines with surgical accuracy. Drones spread out, mapping enemy weaknesses instantly. The Dractions had numbers, but humanity had experience. Evolution had shaped them to survive on a world that tried to kill them every day. War was not new to humans. It was something they had learned through struggle, hardship, and centuries of conflict. Meanwhile, the Titan breakers prepared for deployment. Their drop pods lined up inside the carriers, soldiers standing tall in heavy armor. Their weapons were designed for close quarters combat, dangerous and brutal. Their mission was simple: break through the enemy line, reach the surface, and protect any remaining virulence. But even as the humans fought fiercely, they discovered something else. This wasn't a normal attack. It was a full-scale extermination operation. The Dractions were not here to conquer or enslave. They were here to erase the virulence entirely. That realization hardened humanity's resolve. Ward continued issuing orders, adapting strategies in real time. Every move he made pushed the Dractions back a little more. But they were relentless. Their ships kept coming. Their weapons kept firing. Their numbers didn't seem to end on the planet. The virulence began to hear strange sounds overhead, explosions that didn't match the Draction attacks. They wondered if something new had come to destroy them. But then the sky lit up with streaks of human fighters diving down, battling swarm ships directly above the colonies for the first time. The virulence felt a spark of hope. Still, the danger grew. Every moment the Dractions killed more civilians. Every second the colony burned a little brighter. The longer the battle lasted, the more lives were lost. Ward knew it too. Their arrival had shifted the balance, but the swarm would not give up without a brutal fight, and humanity was not here to retreat. They were here to protect, to defend, to repay an old debt with absolute loyalty. The Dractions had underestimated humans. They would not make that mistake again. The rising conflict reached a point where survival itself became uncertain. The next decision, the next tactic, the next sacrifice, everything mattered. The fate of the virulence, the future of the region, and the survival of millions depended on what happened next. And in that moment, the battle shifted from dangerous to critical, pushing the story toward the moment that would define everything. The battle above. The Virulent colony had already become intense, but Part 3 began with a sudden shift, something that changed everything. As the Death Worlder Armada fought to push the Draction swarm back, a chilling broadcast erupted across every communication channel. It was loud, confident, and filled with cruel arrogance. The Draction commander spoke as if the entire galaxy was listening. "Your Death World myths do not scare us," the creature hissed, its voice cutting through static like claws dragging across metal. "You humans are fragile compared to the swarm. You bleed. You die. We do neither. Surrender or be erased." The message played again and again, echoing across human ships and through the ruined streets of the Virulent colony. Virulent survivors listened from underground shelters, shaking with fear. Human soldiers listened with growing anger, and Admiral Kalen Ward listened with a cold stillness that frightened even his own officers. Ward did not yell. He did not give a dramatic speech. He only stared at the screen, watching the insect-like alien repeat its taunts. To him, this wasn't intimidation. This was a challenge, a dangerous one that the Dractions would soon regret. Before he could respond, a massive explosion erupted on the planet below. The Armada's sensors detected a catastrophic shockwave radiating from one of the Virulent arcologies. Ward turned sharply, eyes wide. "Show it," he ordered. The screen shifted to live planetary visuals. What they saw froze the entire bridge. A Virulent megastructure home to millions had been struck by a devastating energy blast. The crystal towers shattered like glass, collapsing in slow, awful waves. Fires spread through the floating platforms. Spirals of smoke rose into the sky. Debris rained down through the shimmering blue atmosphere. Virulence inside had no chance. Families, children, scholars, gone in an instant. A deep silence filled the command deck. No one moved. Some officers clenched their fists. Others whispered curses under their breath. Even the steady hum of the engines felt quieter, as if the ship itself mourned. The Draxians had not only attacked, they had shown their cruelty deliberately. They wanted to demonstrate how powerless the Virellans were, how powerless humans might be. Ward felt something heavy in his chest. Not fear, something sharper. Determination grew inside him like a fire. The Draxians thought humans were myths, stories, exaggerations. They believed humanity would retreat when things became too overwhelming. They had made a fatal mistake. He turned slowly to his officers. His voice was soft, but strong enough to cut through grief and shock. They want to test us. They want to see what humanity does when pushed to the edge. No one responded. They didn't need to. Ward continued, prepared to answer. As if waiting for those words, dozens of enemy ships broke formation and began targeting a second arcology. High-energy signatures flared again. The Draxians were about to fire another sterilization blast. This one would kill even more civilians. "Admiral, they're charging the cannon." A sensor officer yelled. Ward's eyes hardened. This was at the critical moment, the turning point. He slammed a command onto the console. All ships maneuver to intercept. Titans, stand by for immediate deployment. The calmness in his voice vanished, replaced by raw power. Humanity had been forced into a corner, and humans were most dangerous when pushed. The Armada instantly shifted into an aggressive formation. Carriers moved forward. Battleships spread into a wide arc. Fighters streaked across the battlefield in sharp, calculated lines. Tactical drones flew in swarms, scanning for weak points. The Titan breakers prepared for launch. They moved quickly, locking heavy armor onto their body. Their suits hummed with energy, glowing faintly from the inside. They were tall, strong, and enhanced with technology that fused human biology with advanced cyber. Their helmets sealed with a hiss, their weapons thick, heavy, and deadly latched onto their magnetic armor plates. One Titan muttered through the comm channel, "About time." Another replied, "Let's show them what Earth creates." Their commander activated the drop sequence. Mission objective: break the swarm's advance. Protect the colony. No retreat. Ward watched them from his tactical screen. He knew what the Titans were capable of. They had walked through acidic storms, crossed radiation zones, survived temperatures that melted steel, and fought predators on death worlds that no other species dared step on. The Draxians had never faced anything like them. But before the Titans launched, the Draxians made their next move. A sudden screech burst through communications, louder than the first. The Draxian commander spoke again, this time with fury. "You interfere, you protect the weak, you insult the swarm, so we respond." A bright beam of energy shot from the brood carrier in orbit. Ward shouted, "Brace." The beam streaked past the human formation and slammed into the colony. The ground trembled. A second arcology exploded. More lives lost, more in a sense crushed. The Draxians had escalated the war to a level that could not be undone. Then everything changed. Ward lowered his gaze, his voice almost a whisper. "They want annihilation." He raised his head sharply. "We will show them what annihilation really is." He pushed the final command, "Titan break." The drop pods fired from the carriers like burning meteors. They ripped through the atmosphere, streaking toward the planet at terrifying speed. The Draxians fired at them, but the pods were too fast, their armor too thick. The Titans landed across the colony in explosions of dust and smoke. The moment the pods opened, the ground war began. The Draxians creatures with sharp limbs and armored bodies rushed toward the Titans, screeching and clawing. But the Titans were calm. Their suits absorbed impacts that would tear ordinary humans apart. Their weapons tore through swarm soldiers with brutal efficiency. One Titan grabbed a Draxian by the throat and slammed it into the ground so hard the earth cracked. Another fired a heavy plasma launcher into a group of swarm drones, vaporizing them instantly. A third used a shockwave burst that sent enemy units flying like broken puppets. The Virellan survivors, hiding underground, heard the rumble of battle above. For the first time, their fear shifted into hope. Something powerful was fighting the swarm, something loud, fierce, and unstoppable. While Titans fought on land, the battle in the sky grew even more intense. Human battleships pushed deeper into Draxian formations. They targeted command vessels, cutting off swarm communication lines. Fighters flew through damaged zones, dodging explosions and diving straight into clusters of enemy ships. Drones mapped enemy shields, allowing human weapons to strike weak points. But the Draxians still had more forces. They kept coming like an unending tide. Their hive mind adapted quickly. They shifted formations, tested human defenses, and tried to overwhelm isolated ships. Ward watched the chaotic battlefield, calculating every move. He knew the humans couldn't sustain such an intense fight forever. The Draxians were too many. The Virellans were dying too fast. The planet was collapsing under the pressure, and then came the moment that pushed humanity into a final, decisive rage. A desperate Virellan transmission cut through static. It was faint, broken, and filled with fear. "This is Lith. We are trapped. Children, Please help." Before Ward could respond, her signal went silent. The sensor screen showed the shelter she was transmitting from Mand, then showed the explosion that erased it. The Draxians had killed her. Killed the same woman whose message had called humanity across the stars. Ward's heart felt heavier than ever before. He had listened to her voice again and again during the journey. He had promised silently that humans would come. Now she was gone. The bridge fell quiet. No officer dared speak. They all saw it. They all felt it. Ward spoke in a low, deadly tone. "We're ending this. Now." He activated the full nav tactical interface. His commands were fast and precise. "All forward artillery. Fire on brood carriers. Fighter wings. Cut off escape routes. Carriers. Release heavy drones. Battleships coordinate a focused strike on the main command ship." Human ships shifted instantly, responding to Ward's voice like extensions of his will. The battle entered a new stage, one controlled completely by humanity's fury and skill. Human weapons cut through Draxian armor. Human fighters slashed enemy formations. Human tactics outsmarted hive logic again and again. The Draxians began to panic. They screeched across channels. Human strategies unpredictable. Adjust, adjust. But unpredictability was humanity's greatest strength. They didn't fight like machines. They fought like survivors. Like predators from a death. Like beings who had climbed out of danger for millennia. The Draxians sent everything they had. Every ship, every drone, every unit to crush the humans. But for every attack, the humans answered harder. Ward's eyes were sharper than ever. His voice echoed through every ship. "Hold your ground, push forward, cut them down, protect the colony." The critical moment had come. The point where everything balanced between survival and extinction. The moment the galaxy would remember as the time humans unleashed the true meaning of Death World power. The battle raged with a level of violence the Virulents had never imagined. The Draxians fought with desperation. The humans fought with purpose. And the outcome of the entire conflict began to tilt slowly but unmistakably in humanity's favor. Earth's Death World, or Armada, had come in response to a cry for help. Now, in this critical moment, they were about to bring total annihilation to the swarm that dared threaten their allies. When the battle finally slowed, it felt as if the galaxy itself had taken a long breath. The sky above the Virelin colony was no longer filled with bright explosions or roaring engines. Instead, broken Draxian ships drifted in the void like silent metal ghosts. Their once endless swarm, which had seemed unstoppable only hours earlier, now looked scattered and confused. Many of their vessels were destroyed. The rest were running, jumping into faster-than-light escape routes with panic rather than strategy. For the first time since the humans arrived, there was quiet. Admiral Kalen Ward watched the battlefield from his command deck. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp, studying every sensor reading, every report from ground units, every trace of movement in orbit. He did not celebrate. Humans rarely celebrated during war. They celebrated only after the people they came to save were safe. And that work was far from done. The Virelin colony below was scarred. Fires burned in several districts. Entire structures had collapsed. Refugee groups were packed into underground shelters. Medical teams were overwhelmed. Even though the humans had stopped the swarm, the colony was still in danger, not from enemies, but from the damage left behind. Ward stood straight and gave a single order that spread through the entire Death World, or Armada: begin relief operations. The change in the human fleet was instant. One moment they were warriors fighting for survival. The next moment they were rescuers, engineers, doctors, and builders. It was something no other species fully understood about humanity. They could be terrifying destroyers and gentle protectors at the same time. Their strength came not only from their weapons, but from their ability to shift between brutality and compassion like flipping a switch. The first ships to descend were medical carriers. Their landing gear hit the ruined fields outside the Virulon capital with heavy thuds. Ramps opened, and dozens of human medics rushed out. They carried portable emergency tents, plasma stabilizers, water purification cylinders, and stacks of emergency food packs. Behind them were robotic stretchers that moved on their own, scanning for survivors through rubble and debris. The Virelans watched from a distance at first. They were frightened, even though they had been saved. Many of them had only heard stories about human stories filled with warnings about their aggressive nature, their impossible strength, and their Death World origin. Standing close to them now, seeing their size, their heavy armor, and their determined expressions, the Virelans could not help feeling nervous. But then something unexpected happened. A small alien child, injured and crying, was pulled out from a collapsed building by a human soldier. The soldier gently carried the child to a medic and knelt down to help calm them. The Virulans stared. The human soldier's armor was still covered in soot and scratches from battle, yet his voice was soft. He looked at the scared child the way a parent might look at their own. That image spread through the colony like wildfire. The fear began to fade. The Titan Breakers, the strongest and most heavily enhanced human ground forces, stayed behind as guards, but even they behaved with gentle awareness. These were the same soldiers who, only hours earlier, had fought the Draxians with unstoppable force, yet now they used their strength to lift collapsed structures, stabilize walls, and carry heavy debris that would have taken a dozen Virellans to move. One Titan breaker walked through a ruined marketplace and saw a group of Virellans trying to lift a broken beam off a trapped elder. The Titan approached silently and placed one hand under the beam. He lifted it as if it weighed nothing. The Virellans stared up in awe. The elder was pulled free, alive, and the Titan simply nodded before walking away to help someone else. All around the colony, similar scenes unfolded. Humans worked tirelessly. They did not rest. They did not slow down, and they did not ask for anything. They came to help, and they would help until everyone was safe. Meanwhile, Admiral Ward remained on the command ship coordinating the entire operation. He received constant updates from ground teams. We have stabilized the northern districts. Casualty numbers are lower than estimated. Water supplies are back online. Atmospheric stabilizers are active in the west. Each report made him stand a little taller, but there was one message he was waiting for. Confirmation that the Draxian swarm had fully retreated. The Armada's sensor ships remained outside the system, scanning for return signals. Humans did not take chances with enemies like the swarm. Finally, the report arrived. No Draxian signatures detected within 10 light. They are running. Ward exhaled slowly. The colony was safe. For now. Down on the ground, the Virellan governor, a tall figure with shimmering purple skin, approached the human medics. His voice trembled, not with fear, but with overwhelming gratitude. Your people, you came with such force, and yet you stay with such kindness. We do not know how to thank you. One of the human medics smiled gently. You asked for help. That's all we needed. The governor blinked, surprised. In the Virellan culture, debts were complicated, ceremonial things that required rituals, gifts, or long formal speeches. But humans were different. They did things simply, directly, honestly. Later that day, the governor was invited aboard the flagship to speak with Admiral Ward. As he stepped onto the polished metallic floor of the command deck, he felt his breath catch. Screens showed every detail of the relief efforts below. Hundreds of thousands of humans moved with coordinated precision, like a single giant mind dedicated to rebuilding what had been broken. Ward turned to greet him. The Virellan governor bowed respectfully. Unsure how humans preferred to greet in official settings, Admiral Ward extended his hand instead. You're safe, he said. That's what matters. The governor shook his hand slowly, studying the admiral's expression. There was no arrogance, no hunger for power, no demand for payment. There was only a tired but steady calm, the calm of someone who had seen too many battles, but refused to let those battles define who he became. The two leaders spoke for hours. Ward promised continued support until the colony could operate on its own again. He also shared detailed maps and strategies to prevent future swarm attacks. The Virellan governor could hardly believe how much help they were receiving. You have given us more than we could ever repay, he said quietly. Ward shook his head. You repaid us a long time ago. Your ancestors helped ours when Earth was struggling with its first interstellar steps. Humans don't forget things like that. The governor felt a lump rise in his throat. He had known about that old alliance, but he had not understood how deeply it meant to humanity. As the days passed, the colony began to heal. New temporary homes were built, streets were cleared, food and water distribution centers were operational. Human engineers even repaired the colony's damaged shield generators, upgrading them to stronger versions that Virellan technology could not have produced. The Virellan people slowly stepped out of their shelters. They saw humans working alongside them like equal partners, not conquerors, not rulers, not monsters from a depth, just people strong, determined, and strangely protective. Children approached the human soldiers more often. Some even asked to touch their armor or climb on their robotic support units. Soldiers laughed and gently entertained them. It was a strange sight. Machines built for war being used as toys by curious alien kids. At night. Fires no longer marked destruction. Instead, they marked gathering places where humans and Virellans shared stories of their worlds. The Virellans learned about Earth's harsh jungles, deadly wildlife, and powerful storms. Humans learned about Virella's gentle forests, quiet oceans, and peaceful culture. The differences were huge, yet the connection grew stronger. Because of that connection, the Virellans began to understand why humans were so powerful. It wasn't only because of their weapons or their enhancements. It was because of what they believed. Humans fought like demons when protecting someone, and they cared deeply after the battle was over. On the 7th day after the invasion, Admiral Ward walked through the rebuilt Central Plaza. The damage had been cleared. Fresh support pillars held up repaired buildings. New power lines hummed softly. The colony was alive again. Virellans stopped to bow as he passed. Some whispered blessings. Others placed their hands over their hearts, their cultural sign of respect. Ward nodded politely at each of them. Though he felt a little uncomfortable with the attention, he didn't save them for praise. He saved them because it was the right thing to do. Before he returned to his ship, the Virellan governor approached him with a small glowing crystal. This is a symbol of our gratitude, he said. But more than that, it is a promise. When your people need us, we will answer. Ward accepted the crystal carefully. I hope the day never comes, he replied, but if it does, we will stand together. As the humans prepared to leave, the virulents gathered at the edge of the landing zone, hundreds of them. Their voices rose in a song soft melodic, filled with gratitude. The humans stood quietly, listening. Even the hardened Titan breakers lowered their helmets in respect. When the last human ship lifted off, the colony glowed with new life. They were still recovering, still rebuilding, but they were no longer afraid. The Death Worlder Armada had shown the galaxy something powerful that day. They had shown that humans could bring total annihilation to their enemies, but also bring hope, healing, and protection to their allies. And as the fleet disappeared into the stars, the Virulens knew one thing with absolute certainty. Humanity was not a nightmare to fear. Humanity was a force to trust. The news of the battle spread across the galaxy faster than light could travel. In every star system, on every trading hub, inside every academy and military council, one question repeated again and again: how did the humans destroy a full Draxian swarm fleet so quickly? Nobody had expected such a complete victory. Nobody had believed the humans would arrive in time, and absolutely nobody had thought the Draxians as species feared for their merciless expansion would be the ones running for their lives. But the humans had changed the story of the galaxy in a single day, across hundreds of worlds. People debated endlessly. Some species were amazed. Some were frightened. Some refused to believe the reports at all. It has to be exaggerated, a Koran elder said on a public broadcast. No Death World-born species could be that powerful. But then a ambassador proclaimed in front of the Galactic Council, "They saved our colony when no one else answered. Humans came not to conquer but to protect." This announcement silenced everyone at the same time. Admiral Kalen Ward sat alone in his private office aboard the flagship. The room was dim, quiet, and peaceful, very different from the noise of battle that had filled it earlier. He stared at the glowing crystal the Virulon governor had gifted him. It sat on his desk, shining softly, reminding him of the colony's song, their gratitude, and how close they had been to destruction. Ward had fought many battles in his life, but this one felt different. This one felt necessary. For many hours he sat there thinking about the future. He knew the victory would not simply end the problem. Victory always came with consequences. Some enemies would avoid humans now, others would become curious, and some might see humanity as a threat that needed to be challenged or studied. Power always created shadows. Ward leaned back in his chair. He thought about the Draxians. Would they regroup? Would they return? Would they change their strategies? The swarm was a collective mind, constantly learning from defeat. If they realized humanity was now their greatest obstacle, they might focus all their future aggression on Deathworld. That possibility hung in the air like an unseen storm cloud. But humanity had faced worse storms before. Meanwhile, back on the Virulan colony, life slowly returned to normal. Markets reopened. Families emerged from shelters. Children played in repaired parks. Virulan engineers walked through the streets repairing minor damages while human crews finished installing upgraded shields and scanners. The people had survived the darkest moment of their history, and hope flowed through every rebuilt corridor. In public gatherings, Virulans spoke of the humans with admiration. They came from across the stars, one said, and fought as if our children were their own. Another added, they did not ask for reward or recognition. They fought because we needed them. It was rare for Virulans people known for their calm, peaceful nature to speak with such passion, but they had witnessed something unforgettable. They had seen humanity at its strongest and its kindest when the Death Worlder Armada finally departed. Thousands of Virulans gathered once more on the surface, watching the ships rise into the sky. Their wings, lights, and engines created a shimmering trail across the horizon. A quiet promise settled over the colony. They would never forget what the humans had done, far away from the colony. In deep space, other worlds reacted in their own ways. On a mining moon, a group of traders whispered nervously, "If the humans can do that to the Draxians," one said, "they could wipe out any fleet." Another nodded, "Yes, but they didn't fight for themselves. They fought for someone else." The traders were unsure what to feel, fear or respect. Perhaps both. On a distant ocean world, a council of scholars replayed news recordings. They analyzed every frame. The human ships, the Titan breakers, the battle formations. "We must understand them," a scholar said. "Their strength is unmatched, but so is their compassion. This combination is rare and dangerous." Even the Draxians themselves felt the impact. Deep within their hive clusters, in dark organic chambers filled with pulsating walls, the Swarm Queen replayed the last moments of her defeated fleet. Her drones clicked nervously around her, sharing the fear that now vibrated through the hive mind. The humans were not just predators, they were something worse, unpredictable. They destroyed with terrible force, but then they protected life with equal intensity. This made them impossible to categorize. The swarm feared what it could not understand. Back on the flagship, Admiral Ward received a message from Earth. The Earth Council congratulated the Armada for its success and thanked Ward personally for his leadership. Yet the message contained a subtle warning. Your actions have changed the balance of the galaxy. Many now look to humanity with new expectations and new fears. We must tread carefully. Ward read the message twice. He understood the weight of those words. Humanity had stepped out of the shadows. They could not return to anonymity now. Their power was visible, undeniable, and unforgettable later. As the fleet traveled through hyperspace, Ward left his office and walked through the ship's long corridors. Everywhere he looked, he saw the faces of soldiers, medics, engineers, tired but proud. Some were cleaning their equipment, others were talking quietly about the colony. A few were writing letters to families on Earth. He stopped near a window that showed stars streaking past. A young officer approached him cautiously. "Sir, may I ask something?" Ward nodded. Double quotes, "Do you think we did the right thing?" The officer asked softly. Ward looked out at the rushing stars for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "Yes, we did the right thing. We answered a cry for help. We saved lives. We honored an old promise." The officer nodded, comforted by the certainty in the Admiral's voice. But Ward also added quietly, "And doing the right thing always has a cost. We just haven't seen it yet." When the officer walked away, Ward stayed by the window, continuing to watch the stars. He knew the galaxy had changed. He could feel it. 1 week later, the Virulents published a message addressed to every known civilization. It was a simple statement, but its meaning was powerful. Humanity saved us when no one else would. We stand with them now and forever. This message spread through interstellar networks like a spark in dry grass. Suddenly, the view of humanity shifted. Species that had once been suspicious now reconsidered. Others who had ignored the humans now paid attention. Allies saw them as protectors. Rivals saw them as threats. But the most important change happened in the hearts of ordinary people across the galaxy. Many who had never met a human before felt a strange sense of security. If humanity exists, one alien mother told her child, there is always someone strong enough to defend the innocent. On Earth, citizens watched broadcasts of the Virulent song performed during the human departure. People cried, smiled, and felt pride swell inside them. For years, Earth had struggled with its death world reputation. But now, that reputation meant something different. It meant that humans survived the impossible so they could help others survive too. In schools, children learned about the Virulent rescue not as a lesson in war, but as a lesson in responsibility. Teachers said, being strong is not enough. Use your strength to protect those who cannot protect themselves. These words echoed what humanity had shown on the battlefield. One evening, as Admiral Ward prepared to sleep, he received a final message from the Virulent governor. It was short but sincere. "You showed our people light in the darkest moment of our lives. We will never forget. If you ever call for help, we will answer without fear." Ward smiled faintly at the message. He placed the glowing crystal beside his bed. Its gentle light filled the small room, warming the cold metallic walls. He whispered to himself, "Let's hope we never need to make that call." As the Deathworld or Armada continued its journey home, the galaxy continued to talk. Some spoke with admiration, some with fear, some with confusion, but every conversation repeated one truth again and again. Humanity was no longer just a Deathworld species. They were legendary now. Stories spread of humans lifting impossible weights, fighting impossible foes, and healing shattered worlds. These stories grew, passed from world to world, changing little with each retelling because they needed no exaggeration. The truth was impressive enough. The final result of the entire event was clear. When someone sends a cry for help into the darkness, humanity will hear it. They will come no matter the distance, no matter the risk. And when they come, they bring both unimaginable destruction for enemies and unshakable protection for friends. In the end, one message echoed through every corner of the galaxy, spoken with fear by enemies and with hope by allies. If the humans arrive, the battle is already over. And for the first time in history, the galaxy realized that the most dangerous species born on a dead world were also the ones most willing to stand between evil and the innocent.